my friend. My children live.
Then the only way to kill them is to kill you.
So, what's the deal with a Van Helsing sequel? Could it do things differently this time around? Or are we looking at a full-on reboot with a fresh cast? There's also talk about part 2, continuing the story with some new faces. And hey, what about a prequel? What's going on with the next Van Helsing movie? Well, here's everything we know so far about Van Helsing 2 and more. For those who aren't familiar with the Van Helsing franchise, let me just fill you in. Van Helsing is a 2004 action horror movie written and directed by Stephen Sommers. It stars Hugh Jackman as the monster hunter Van Helsing and Kate Beckinsale as Anna Valerious. The movie is both a tribute to and an homage to the classical Universal horror monster films from the 1930s and 40s like Dracula and Frankenstein, movies that Sommers is a huge fan of. The character of Van Helsing is based on the Dutch vampire hunter Abraham Van Helsing from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The film features a whole bunch of iconic monsters including Count Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, Mr. Hyde, werewolves and more. Kinda like a nod to the old school monster mashups Universal used to do, like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Despite making $300.2 million globally against a budget of around $160 to $170 million, the movie didn't exactly win over critics, with most reviews being pretty negative. Universal Pictures was so confident that Van Helsing would be a box office hit that they started working on a sequel before the first movie even hit theaters. They even kept the original Transylvania sets, thinking they'd need them for the follow-up and other projects. However, despite the film doing decently at box office, the sequel plans were eventually scrapped. In May 2012, Universal Pictures announced plans for a Van Helsing reboot with Alex Kurtzman and Roberta Orci on board to produce a modern reimagining, and Tom Cruise set to star as the title character, also producing the film. By October of that year, Rupert Sanders was in early talks to direct. However, by November 2015, John Speight and Eric Heiserer joined as co-screenwriters, though Cruise ultimately left the project. The following year, Cruise was cast in Kurtzman's The Mummy, which marked the beginning of Universal's failed attempt at revamping its classic monsters universe. After the critical and financial disappointment of The Mummy, Universal decided to shift their focus, choosing to make the rebooted monster films standalone rather than connected. Fast forward to December 2020 and the Van Helsing reboot was back in the works. Julius Avery was hired as director and Eric Pearson was brought on to rewrite the original script. James Wan was attached as producer, and the project would be a collaboration between Universal Pictures and Wan's Atomic Monster production company. In April 2023, director Julius Avery provided an update on the Van Helsing reboot, confirming that it's still moving forward despite a lack of updates over the past few years. Avery shared, "I'm currently writing and intend to direct myself with James Wan producing." While he didn't go into detail about the delays, he expressed his enthusiasm for the project, adding, "But yeah, that's still in motion. I can't tell you much more than that, but I'm very, very excited about it." It seems like Van Helsing has gotten a bit lost in the shuffle with all the changes at Universal. The reboot was officially confirmed back in December 2020, with James Wan producing and Julius Avery set to direct and rewrite the script. Universal made it clear that this reboot wouldn't be a part of the failed Dark universe, but rather a standalone film similar to the success of The Invisible Man in 2020. Unfortunately, after that initial announcement, updates have been sparse, and aside from Avery's brief comment in early 2023, there's been no major news. With Universal's plans for their classic Monsters franchise constantly shifting, it seems like Van Helsing may have just gotten caught up in the chaos. For the Van Helsing reboot, it's looking more likely that we'll get a fresh cast, with a new actor stepping into the titular role. While no official cast announcements have been made yet, fans can expect to see some familiar faces from the original Dracula lore, with Count Dracula being a very strong contender to appear as the villain. After all, Van Helsing is a vampire hunter, and Dracula is the obvious choice. As for Hugh Jackman reprising his role from the 2004 movie, it seems unlikely. This reboot appears to be a clean slate, separate from the previous film, so bringing Jackman back would probably feel out of place. Instead, we're probably going to see a completely new actor taking the charge, with a fresh cast supporting the story. It's still up in the air whether the Van Helsing reboot will stick to a traditional retelling of Stoker's classic tale, or take a more modern, subversive approach similar to what The Invisible Man did. However, one thing's for sure, the titular Van Helsing will likely be battling vampires, and it's almost guaranteed that Dracula will play a major role. The two were so closely tied in the original story that it'd be surprising if Dracula wasn't part of the reboot. Given that director Julius Avery has had a background in supernatural horror, fans can expect a darker, more chilling vibe for this reboot. Whatever direction it takes, it's shaping up to be an intense and potentially terrifying ride. If Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing were to return in a sequel, it would likely focus on a new chapter in his story, building off the unresolved themes of redemption, memory, and the battle against supernatural evil. Since the first film ended with Van Helsing victorious, yet emotionally scarred, a potential continuation could explore several parts. Given that Van Helsing's quest for redemption was a central theme in the first film, a sequel could further delve into his internal struggles. Perhaps Van Helsing is still grappling with his past and the lost memories of his former life, seeking out more answers to who he truly is. The discovery of more of his forgotten history could tie into another legendary monster or villain, keeping with the theme of him facing larger-than-life horrors, possibly even exploring more famous literary creatures like the Mummy or the Invisible Man from Universal's Monster Vault. The new storyline could involve Van Helsing being drawn back into the world of monsters by an emerging threat, possibly involving the remains of Dracula's lineage. While Dracula is gone, his influence could have left a dark legacy, with new threats rising in Transylvania and beyond. A potential plot could see Van Helsing encountering other supernatural forces, attempting to fill the power vacuum left by Dracula's death. This could include a mysterious new villain, or even the rise of a faction of vampires who seek revenge for Dracula's death, setting the stage for an epic showdown. Another compelling plot could involve the continuation of Van Helsing's cursed werewolf transformation. In the original, it was hinted that only a werewolf could kill Dracula, and Van Helsing's bite was a key moment in the battle. A sequel could explore Van Helsing's curse more deeply, perhaps forcing him to fight his inner beast and come to terms with his own monstrous side. This could even introduce an antagonist who shares his condition, creating a moral and physical battle between two similar yet opposing forces. Anna's death in the first film has left a large emotional void for Van Helsing, and a sequel might address his ongoing grief and how it shapes his motivations going forward. Perhaps Anna's spirit returns to guide him, or maybe a new love interest appears, offering Van Helsing a chance at redemption and healing, though that might bring with it new dangers as well. Given the evolving nature of sequels, it's likely that a new Van Helsing film would feature a fresh cast of characters. While Jackman would likely return, possibly in a more limited or supporting role, new faces could join him, including a new monster hunting partner, a villainous entity, or even descendants of the Valerious family who seek to continue their ancestors' fight against evil. As for the villains, the film could introduce other supernatural figures from folklore and classic horror tales. A continuation of Dracula's story could bring about his ancient allies, such as a new breed of vampires or powerful creatures like the Frankenstein monster, who could either become an ally or a foe depending on his own agenda. Additionally, the possibility of Van Helsing facing off against another monstrous creation, maybe something even worse than Dracula, would make for a thrilling sequel. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.